All right, welcome back, everybody, to episode 11 of the Lenny Poliziani show. I got a pretty special guest on here today, Jimmy Vreeland. We're both members of the Collective Genius. He's in the Premier. I am in the Select group. We got to meet for the first time a couple months back at the quarterly meeting. So, Jimmy, I appreciate you making a couple minutes today and hopping on my show. Welcome.
Thanks, Lenny. Thanks for having me on.
100%. Well, listen, man, you got a pretty awesome background. I put it in the description of the show. But why don't you spend a few minutes telling the audience a little bit about yourself, all the way from, how I guess you got started in real estate. I know you have a military background and kind of your journey up until now.
Sure. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. Then I went to West Point for college. After college, I went to Ranger school. Then after Ranger school, I started on. I went on a total of 3 deployments in between, 2004 and 2008. And in my last deployment, I actually read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I got the real estate.
I think that's how everybody starts.
Yeah. And then, when you're deployed, you don't spend any money because you can't, because you're in a desert.
Yeah.
And then you don't pay taxes. And then I was getting combat pay and jump pay. So I was coming home pretty flush. And then I just started picking up rentals then and there.
I got to ask you a question real quick. Who introduced you to Rich Dad, Poor Dad? How did you stumble upon that book out there?
I think my mom saw him on Oprah and was like, you got to read this.
That's awesome.
So, I started doing deals with my mom and brother, back in 2006.
Sweet. Keep it in the family, right?
You know it.
Well, listen, let's take a step back a little bit. I don't know if this is in the family or this was just kind of from growing up. You always wanted to get into and join the military, some branch of the military, but what's how did that kind of lead? How did your path lead to the military at first?
You want the long answer or the short answer?
It's your show, man. You're the guest.
I'll do the kind of medium answer. So growing up, it was all sports. Like I played 3 sports in high school. Okay. I loved sports. And it got to the point where like senior year, it was basketball season. And I really wanted a basketball scholarship. And so my grandpa comes up to me. He's like, hey, what are you thinking about college? And I'm like, I want to get a basketball or football scholarship. And he's like, well, where do you want to go? And I was like, I'm not sure. He's like, Notre Dame's not and we're Irish Catholic. And so we're a big Notre Dame fan. He's like,
okay.
Yeah. So Notre Dame's not exactly knocking down your door. Are they? Like, no. He's like, what about University of Missouri? I was like, no. And like, at this point I was starting to get like some D2 offer, stuff like that. And he's like, here's the thing, Jimmy, you're a good athlete. You're just not that good of an athlete to do that. And then he's like, and I had pretty good grades. And he's like, academically, he's like, yeah, Harvard's probably not in the cards, is it? And I was like, no. And at this point, he started to piss me off, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what is your point, Grandpa? And so he hands me this book called The Civil War. And it's a book about the Army-Navy game.
Okay.
And he's like, you want to read this book? Like, the Naval Academy, West Point, it's for people like you, like smart, athletic, good kids.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to get a football scholarship to Notre Dame, but what's the second best thing? Getting to play Notre Dame.
Yep.
And so I read that book and I was pretty much hooked. And then he took me up for a visit at campus.
Yeah.
And then I was pretty much hooked from there.
Wow. That's awesome. So tough love a little bit.
Yeah. You want to hear an even funnier story about that?
Please. Yep.
Yeah. My grandpa was full tough love. And so was my dad. So how old were you in 2001?
2001. I think I was 9 years old.
Okay. So I was 22.
Okay.
So here's the deal or 21 at the military academy. You can go the first 2 years, and if you quit, no harm, no foul. But if you show up your first class of your junior year, you're committed. You're going to be in the military for 5 years.
Wow.
Afterwards. So if you get kicked out of West Point, you're going in enlisted, but you're going to do 5 years.
Wow.
And so it's a big decision. So I
Yeah.
call home to my grandpa, and like I can see I'm not going to get any playing time. Like I was, I'm warming the bench.
Sure.
I was a walk on to begin with, and I'm like, Grandpa, Dad, I don't think I think I'm coming home. I don't think I want to do this anymore. And they're like, why? And they're like, and I'm like, well, I'm not getting any time at football.
Yeah.
And they just start laughing at me, and they're like, what does that matter? And they're like, I came here to play football. They start laughing harder. And they're like, look, we allowed you to maintain the illusion that you were a football player just so you would go. And so, and then I'm like, well, Dad, I don't want to go to war. I don't know. I don't know if I want to go to war. And like, so that I forgot the other thing about this. This is like August 15th, 2001, right? And my dad's like, oh, we never go to war anymore. And so 3 weeks later, we're in a 20-year war. So, but it was after 9/11, I got pretty serious.
Wow, that is nuts, man. And from there, you had a couple of deployments, and I mean, it's pretty impressive. You went as an Army Ranger after that. So, I mean, was that kind of like a side of you that you kind of uncovered? I mean, it didn't sound you didn't want to go at first, but it sounded like you excelled in as far as the military aspect.
I'm just a really, really competitive person.
I can tell.
And yeah, so it was just like football's over. What's really cool that I could do now?
Yeah.
Oh, Ranger school.
Boom.
And then I deployed with the regular Army. I'm like, what's something cool? Something hyper competitive and cool I go do. It's like, okay, join 75th Ranger Regiment. And then at 9/11, like I was pretty pissed off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Old timers
your motivation.
Old timers like me, a lot of us were very not happy.
And I think by the end, people will understand that your personality. Of course, I've rewatched. I'm newer to CG, so a lot of them I've rewatched your calls. But you're a doer. You don't like details, and you just go.
Yeah, I don't. I kind of like business. Taker. Yeah, business for me has been like jumping out of planes. Like it was something cool you could do. You could go to airborne school, right?
Yep.
I'm like, oh, that's cool. I kind of got to do it to be a Ranger. And, like girls will think it's cool.
Yep.
And so I go do it, but I don't think about any of the details. I don't
Love
think
that.
about the fact that you have to actually jump out the plane.
Yep.
And so I was an officer, so I would always have to be front of the line. So first jump in airborne school, I hadn't thought about the fact that, hey, I had to jump out of a plane.
Yeah.
So they open up the door. Yeah, it's the whole point of the school. But they open up the door, then they stick me like outside the window before they let me jump, and I'm like, "Oh my god!"
What was the first jump you had? What was going through your mind?
Well, like nothing until it was time to do it, and it was just like,
"All right, I'm here."
It's like I'm traveling out of a perfectly good airplane. Like, why am I doing this?
Yep.
And so, well, once you actually, and then. That's one thing I took from that school. All I really had to do was take the first step. It wasn't like the cool halo jumps you see like the SEALs doing and stuff. And you can't like steer the parachute. It was all you had to do is take the first step. And so even though I hadn't thought about any details, even if I hadn't done any of the right things, I just took the first step and then the chute opened and then the rest is history.
Then it's fight or flight. You're just survival mode. You're doing what you can to land.
But like I have a very bad habit of getting into business stuff and not even considering the details.
Yep. There's a genius in that though.
Yeah, it's a good and bad habit.
Sometimes you got to work yourself out of holes, but there's a genius in the experiment.
Yeah, you can always think later.
For sure. Well, listen, I probably would skip this part, but I think this is pretty cool. We mentioned it first time we met, but we have a similar background before we both got into real estate full time.
Yeah.
Of medical device sales.
Yeah.
So transitioning from the military, my introduction to medical device sales was kind of unique. How I got the position. How did that come about?
I was trying to get out of the military, and then they have a bunch of headhunters for you call junior military officers, and all I knew is I wanted to go home.
Yeah.
And so I just got very lucky. One of the headhunters played football in Army, and he's like, "Hey, I know a guy who is looking for graduates in St. Louis for medical device sales." And my brother was in med school. He's like, "Your brother will teach you what to do. Do you want to go sell?" And I was like, "Dude, I don't really care as long as I make money." And he's like, "Okay, you're going to go do this job." So I got to work with another Army West Point football guy.
Sweet.
Had a great time there.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a good for sales, especially. I mean, it's a good position. You know, it's a good career, and people always ask me because I did really well, and it kind of gave me the ability at age 26 to make that transition. I went to college. I was going the corporate route. You know, fell upon it. You know, I was golfing, ran into a surgeon that I went to school with his son. He was with his med sales rep. And next thing I know, I'm out to lunch at an interview, drove out to New York from Pittsburgh and got a referral when I got hired. I was right out of college and, you know, did pretty well, you know, as far as pay and opportunities. So me, I just always wanted more. I'm, you know, still am young, but, you know, I knew that there was
like,
something.
it was great cash, except half of it went to the government. And I was just like, no.
Yeah.
Like, I got to find an alternative. And then I remember back to Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yep.
But learning to sell, you've got to agree, it translates to any industry.
I was going to say, if you can sell, I mean, that's a life skill in itself. So, you know, I credit that. And, you know, no matter what product or what you're selling, there's similarities, you know, in the process. So, you know, that played into, I guess, being able to get into real estate and acquisitions, which is my part right now. The transition a little easier. Now, did you do real estate as far as when you were working that full-time sales position?
Yeah, I was always picking up. So I got out in 2008. I met my wife in 2009.
Nice.
And then between 2010 and 2015, we had 4 kids. So when we weren't like deep in baby mode, like I was still picking up rentals. And then 2015, I think I picked up around 20. And then 2016, I picked up like another. I learned from the sales skills I learned in corporate. Yeah. I learned how to raise private money, and then I bought 60 rentals in 2016.
Sweet.
And then 16 quit my job, and then it was off to the races.
Wow. Yeah. So I guess, what was the turning point? I mean, you had so many rentals, you were fully invested in real estate. You're like, it's time to get out of corporate. I'm going full time in this. Was there any like specific point?
Yeah, I call it your strike number. So in our education company, Cashflow Tactics, like this is part of the vernacular, but we got this from Kiyosaki. As soon as your passive income equals your expenses, you're wealthy. And so I kind of broke it down. Here was my math. Like I was making probably $250 to $300 every year, right? Mm-hmm. And I was keeping $125 to $150 every year.
Yep.
And so I was like, wait a minute.
Isn't that crazy?
I don't have to replace $300K in income. I have to replace really $150. And I'm still, you know, happily married with 4 kids living in a nice neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so my wife, like, she wanted me to quit. Like, she saw I had a passion for this. Like, she wanted me out. And then she's like, we broke it down to our ramen noodle budget of, if we just ate ramen noodles and didn't go on vacations and didn't do anything, how much money we didn't need to make. It was about $5,000.
Wow.
And so then I did quick math. I said $300 per rental. I'm going to do that math again. I should be able to remember, but it was like 5,000 divided by 300. It was like 20 rentals. And then, so once I got up to 60, she's like, we have enough income coming in. Like, stop it. Like, do this full time.
Yeah. How'd that feel?
It was great.
Yeah.
You know,
that's amazing.
Me and my wife, you know, very happily married, but I'll always be not a lot of wives after. We're like in the hospital with the 4th child, and I'm at the 60th rental. And she's like, I had a doctor calling me, like bitching at me about something that, you know, I'm in the hospital holding my new kid. Right. And she's like, you should really quit. Very few wives would say that.
And if you know medical device sales or just the medical industry, I mean, it's 24/7. Were you orthopedic equipment or? Yeah. Especially with that. I mean, you're basically on call.
Well, yeah, I did trauma and I was on call all that, but like, I mean, I would suck up every surgery I could because I knew every dollar was going in to buy another rental property, which got me out faster and got me closer.
Yep. So obviously Kiyosaki was a one of the first mentors or people that you learned from or followed rentals. I know you got Vreeland Capital. You know, as far as outside of rentals, I obviously know you're huge in the turnkey space, raising private money. Now, do a lot of wholesales as well, or is
Yeah.
it okay?
Yep.
Yep.
We had to just start. We just had to start wholesaling to get more turnkey inventory.
Yep.
Like I had to start controlling the supply.
Yep. And I saw I think it might have been your last call you did for Collective Genius, where the shift. I know everybody's talking about the market right now. Actually, it being a crazy market made it, or you thought it at least made it a little tougher for turnkey. And when the market shifts, this is actually a great time for turnkey buyers.
Yeah, turnkey was not easy the last 2 years. Just because everybody was snagging up every property. Like 2018, 2019, I would like wake up. It was easy to buy houses.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2020, 2021, it was tough. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, but if you look at the math, if you're a passive investor, it doesn't really matter what the interest rate is as long as it's fixed. As long as you get 30-year fixed financing. So since the interest rate hike in the market has cooled off, it's been good for us. It's been good for our turnkey buyers too.
Yeah. And it's like one of those exit strategies that, until I watched a couple of videos and, joined CG, I never really thought about or focused or understood, to be honest, as another source of a buyer. And this has taken another direction. But one of the biggest things you talk about is one thing, I think, especially right now for people to focus on. And we were all over the place. But we made a decision, in the last 6 months to focus on one thing, which is wholesaling.
Yeah.
But, a turnkey buyer could be a great disposition strategy for a wholesale business,
Sure.
and especially right now, people in real estate. I don't think too many people are familiar. So just an overview, elementary, explanation. What is a turnkey buyer and what do they look for?
Yeah, so a turnkey buyer is it's pretty much guys like you and me who are doing really good in medical sales, but they need some type of tax relief and they need some type of income outside of their job.
Mm-hmm.
So they need real estate. Now, needing real estate and being able to get real estate are two separate issues.
Sure.
So a turnkey provider, just because these professionals who are making over 250K a year, they're very lendable, very bankable, but they don't have the time to find the house, to do the rehab, to do all that. They're all smart enough. They've all read Rich Dad Poor Dad. They all know what they need. Like, quite frankly, I'd still be in medical sales if turnkey existed back then.
Wow.
Yeah. So a turnkey provider or a turnkey deal is just a rental with rehab's already done. It's got property management attached to it so that it can truly be a passive asset for the end buyer.
Now that sounds like a lot for somebody that we have a small team. I've been doing this full time, just about 2 years. So there's some steps involved with getting it turnkey ready to fit that criteria. And obviously I know because I'm in, I've watched some of your videos and talked to you, but I think you have a pretty cool option for people as far as you have to get the property ready to that turnkey state, and also property management, have it rented out. So what do you provide for people with your business? Say I got my wholesaling company. I don't have the team or the means to get everything in place as far as, renovating it or putting a property management in place. Like, what would I do next to work with you?
So has it been rehabbed or no?
Sure. Well, let's just say we put we did the rehab, we got it in retail condition. But obviously I don't have a property management company, really know the steps, what would I do next or what would I need to do? So
if you would be in St. Louis, then we would pretty much just do a co-wholesaling agreement. And then I'd find the buyer. The rehab would have to pass our stand. And then as soon as the house was sold, we'd manage it.
Perfect.
So as long as the rehab was solid, we'd make it pretty simple.
Wow. You know, that's a huge, and I mean, there's a ton of guys doing what you do. Are you just in, because we never really talked in depth about this. Are you
Yeah.
just in the St. Louis market? Or are you all Midwest basically at this point?
I am stuff that I own that I'm selling is only St. Louis, but
St. Louis.
I sell other turnkey assets to my students in casual tactics. So
Gotcha.
other CG people, I do sell their assets to my buyers.
Gotcha. Yep. Because I know you do a lot with especially Eric Brewer. I'm in
Yep.
the Brewer method. I know Eric obviously through CG, and I know that you guys do a lot of business together. So I know he's in York, the York market, Pennsylvania mainly.
Yep.
So I was kind of seeing how that kind of worked together.
Yes. So basically, he has the asset. It's meets the turnkey standards, and then he has a relationship with a property management company. So he sends us the asset. We send it to our buyers list and sell the house.
Perfect. And as far as being criteria for turnkey, just for the audience and people wondering, what does that have to, numbers wise? What does it have to look like? You know, the property, I guess. Is there a sweet spot with the value of the property, the rent? You know,
So
what does that look like?
yeah, it used to be the 1% rule. Like the end purchase price needs to be, or the
Yep.
rent needs to be 1% of the purchase price. It's kind of dialed back to the 0.8% rule. So like $1,000 rent will sell for 120.
Mm-hmm.
And then what
Wow.
that turnkey provider is really looking for is they don't want to have any real major mechanical expenses for at least 5 years. So
Gotcha.
got to have a good roof. It's got to have a good AC. Got to have a good furnace. It's mainly the mechanicals.
Yeah.
Like they don't want to be replacing an AC in the first 5 to 10 years.
Gotcha. And as far as does it have to have like a property management company in place? Is that a requirement for them?
Yeah, because they're not going to buy. They're not going to manage the property
They don't
themselves.
want they want a completely passive hands off.
Yeah,
And I think
because
yeah,
the
go
worst
ahead.
part about getting into real estate is the property management for a passive investor.
Yeah. And it's not hard. It's very hard to, I guess, identify, qualify. You know, property management is a tricky sector altogether. I feel like.
It's just a thankless job.
Yeah, that is
You only
exactly
hear
it.
from your property manager if something's wrong.
Yeah, yeah. You're not going to give them a compliment, but when it's wrong, it all that's usually the conversation.
Correct.
And I think this is something for everybody to know. And I, was first of all, I was like, oh, why don't we get into property management and all that? But I think there's a golden rule that you should at least do 300.
Yeah, you got to be doing at least managing 300 units for it to cash flow or to make sense. Like when we were going 0 to 300, it was miserable.
Now, I guess what was the biggest headache or learning lesson from doing it too early?
I lost close. It ate into my flipping profits by about 150K.
That'd be painful.
Yeah, that was a hard lesson learned.
Wow. Now, where did most of that cost, I guess, come from? Like, what was the main struggles with it?
Good, slippage on rehabs. So that's if I'm a turnkey provider, I want a connection between the end property manager and the flipper. Because, if we have let's say tomorrow we get a maintenance call for something we did a flip on.
Sure.
It allows us to become better flippers, become better rehabbers because we're tied to the property for the foreseeable future. So we got to do a better flip.
Gotcha. And for anybody not in real estate, I think, contractors and renovations and all that and property, like those are the hardest things. Contractors in general and renovation budgets, I mean, that's just as tough. So throwing those two together, and if you don't stay within budget, big disaster.
Huge disasters.
Big disaster. So that makes
total sense. Whether it's a turnkey flip or retail flip.
Anything. I mean, because we do flips in Pennsylvania. We have 4, right now. And then but recently, like I said, we're like with our size of our team and just listening to the people that have done it before. I think focusing on one thing, building out a wholesale business. That's our direction because we've ran into the same struggles. You got to have a team, a management team running your flips, and I mean the costs add up, and you lose your profit very fast. It sounds sexy, but
very fast.
it's not easy when you're dealing with contractors and
people only talk about, like, I made this on a flip. They don't talk about, like gamblers. They'll never talk about their losses.
Well, that, and you see the proceeds on the HUD, but a lot of that goes towards the private lender or splitting it, this and that. The numbers look good.
What was your overhead for your team? And then, did you pay your taxes?
Yep.
Like, did you put money aside to pay your taxes? All that type of stuff.
Yep. And then something in the market happens like this, where there's a gap period and people don't want to hold out, and you got 4 flips going on, and you're like, oh, I thought it was going to sell for 400. Now you're down to 360.
Yeah.
Yep.
All those type of shenanigans.
Yep. 100%. And I know you mentioned cash flow tactics. So I don't know how long have you been in the education space? When did this start? And what does it involve?
Yeah, so it started because, like, just having allow somebody to buy rentals and not have it around a comprehensive financial plan. It's like, one, the end buyer's never happy.
Yeah.
And then 2, it's like letting a child run with scissors. So if you just buy one rental, everybody's unhappy. If you're going to buy rentals, you got to buy between 5 and 10 for it to make any financial sense. And then so my business partners are financial planners. And so they show you how to make real estate part of your comprehensive financial plan. Because we want to get all our students, we want to get them financially free, hit that strike number, that number I talked about earlier, within 10 years.
Wow.
And it's almost inevitable that if you follow up the cash flow tactics process, because here's the thing, a single family rental with the internal rate of return that you get from appreciation, cash flow, tax advantages, and the ability to use leverage, it's pretty much a 30% IRR year over year over year.
It's crazy.
So if you own these assets for 10 years, it's hard not to be financially free.
Look at the trends over the last 80 years of everything. Rent, it's
Well, the median home price in the United States has doubled every 20 years since the last 7 years.
Even with the recessions and everything. Yep.
Even with 2008 was supposedly the most horrible, worst thing ever. Still doubled.
Yep. And I think the biggest thing is there's multiple ways, like you just mentioned, to make money on real estate. You got the appreciation, you got the cash flow. It's
you got
different.
The tenant paying down your mortgage. I mean, that
on a fixed rate. Yeah.
It's the least sexy, but when someone else pays off your debt, it's pretty cool.
And I think it's interesting, and the genius behind it, if you're involved in real estate on either side, it's funny because being an entrepreneur, being a real estate investor, we have a tough time getting approved for loans like this, conventional lending. And what's the saying that you have? It's like your American duty to get utilize at least 20 loans.
Not very few people know this, but you can get a 30-year fixed loan. So everybody gets their first mortgage on their home loan, and everybody's like, that's a great investment, right?
Sure.
But very few people know you can get 9 more. And if you're married, you can get 19 more.
Double that.
Yeah. So to get 10 to 20, 30-year fixed rate loans, that's pretty much a government subsidy. So I call it's a middle-class welfare payment. You cannot get 30-year fixed financing anywhere other than real estate. And so whether what I tell our students, doesn't matter what your tenants do, doesn't matter if you have vacancy, doesn't matter if you have maintenance. All that matters is that you have 30-year fixed loans.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the interest rate being high now, doesn't matter. Who cares? When the interest rate drops, you just refinance.
Yep.
But bottom line is you get a tenant paying down your mortgage today.
Yep. And that was eye-opening. Of course, I've known this, but when you put it paint the picture like that, and how many people around you that, always ask questions, want to get into real estate, and at their fingertips, just by being a W-2 employee, they have access to this much leveraging of capital. It's nuts. You could be financially free if you just And you don't have to rush this too. You could do 1, 2 a year.
We say 2 a year for 10 years. You're set.
You're set.
Which is essentially what I started doing in 2005. I started
Yep.
buying 2 a year for 10 years.
Yep. Yep. And it's funny that nobody really comprehends or knows that. They don't promote that.
Well, they're too busy sucking down the garbage on CNBC.
I was gonna say, I knew that was gonna come up. As far as stock, there's one way to make money. Buy low, sell high. Crypto, all of that. But the way I look at it, and listen, half the reason why I'm not in it is because I study real estate. I'm trying to focus on one thing. It's easy to get shiny object syndrome. I don't know that much about the other markets, but it is essentially somebody's controlling the lever on the other side. A lot of factors, even like a tweet can go out and change a stock's value or crypto. Real estate, it does change.
Here's the other thing. The other thing about stock market is you're not investing. You're speculating.
Yeah.
You buy low and sell high. That is the pure definition of a speculation. An investment is a departing of capital for a certain time period with the expectation of a return of the original capital plus income in the form of rents, dividends, and I forget the last, or interest.
Yep.
There's a great book called What I Learned Losing $1 Million. It breaks all that down for you.
Yep. That's the difference right there. But the majority of the public, I mean, that's what's promoted. That's what you said on CNBC. That's all people know or think about investing. The beauty is we're going through this like change, or is there going to be a crash? Like you said, especially with the turnkey situation or just getting conventional lending, that doesn't affect it. And for us, people are like, what are you going to do? The values are going down, or they're not what they were. You just adjust your entry point. You just adjust your number.
Yeah.
Like
for wholesalers, not a lot of people are predicting that a crash in the real estate market should not affect wholesalers, because we're just simply middlemen. Just means our purchase price goes lower.
And how many different, that's the beautiful thing. I think you hit on it as well. There's so many different strategies in real estate you can adjust to, creative financing, just getting it at a number that makes sense. And you're watching, it's more predictable. If the prices decrease, the values, then just, you might have to go in 10% lower. If somebody wants to sell, that still makes sense for them.
Yeah.
So it's more controllable. We don't have a crystal ball, but there's multiple ways to make money, and they're always in avenues. So
I hate crypto. Don't hate it. Like, it's a good hedge. I like it as a hedge, but like, I don't love it, because to make any money from it, you got to sell it.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I like keeping assets that I don't sell that keep putting money in my pocket.
Yeah. How do you get paid? You got to sell it off.
Yeah. That's why I don't like stocks. How do you get, that none of them pay dividends anymore?
You only touch your money when you sell it.
Yeah, I'm not going to buy Tesla. Maybe it's a bad decision, but fundamentally, I don't like things I have to sell to make money on.
Yep. That's huge. And I know we're almost, listen, we'll spend a couple more minutes here, but obviously I met you through Collective Genius. I'm new to it. You've been in it how many years now?
4.
Wow. Yeah, unbelievable group. You run the implementation calls for it. How long and that's semi-recent, right? Where they put you as far as running those calls. How did that kind of come about, and whose idea, I guess, was that?
The guy who runs, for the audience, the guy who runs Select, Leon Barnes, is a phenomenal human being, and
he's the man.
Always been he's been one of my best friends at CG since he started. Yeah. And then we started playing a lot of basketball together, which helped that relationship. But
when we played basketball, that was the first time I stepped on the court, probably like 4 years. But man, I was winded.
But it's fun, right?
It's real fun, man. I love that.
But so when Leon started Select, I just went to him like, hey, I love teaching, I love coaching, I love being part of a team. So if you guys are hiring, let me know. And then they were hiring. And so that's how they threw me in there. And then, my skill set is implementing and executing. So they're like, hey, if you could lead a call on this, it'd be great.
Yeah. And I didn't understand that at first when you did your presentation, I guess, at the first meeting, what your, I guess, your superpowers were. But it's just you go, you see it, and you implement it right away. which everybody procrastinates. So, you know, I don't know if you ever struggled with that, or I guess this is a question for me and for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle procrastinating on 9 out of 10 things. I just get done the one thing that really matters. I don't procrastinate.
If anybody can take anything, that's the golden nugget, the one thing, because you're gonna have 10 things at a time going on.
Yeah, like I got a ton of crap on my to-do list right now that I don't care about until my one thing for the day's done or my one thing for the quarter.
Is it? Yep. Is the one thing today? Hey, is the one thing today the Lenny Poliziani show?
No, sorry, buddy. I had to sell some houses today. But I made sure to get that done so I could be completely focused for this.
You did. You're the man. And this goes with being accountable, not to other people, but yourself. You know, holding yourself accountable to get that one thing done.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to lie to yourself, who's the next person you're willing to lie to?
That's sketchy territory if you're lying, you know. But everybody's faulty of it, you know. It's how we're wired. But listen, man, we'll wrap this up. I appreciate it. You know, if anybody wants to get in touch, I think you mentioned, I could be wrong, but you know, you do a lot on social media now, and you're trying to do more as far as, you know, promoting yourself, your business, coaching. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
I think I'm on Instagram as Jimmy Vreeland, or just put Jimmy Vreeland in Facebook and I'll pop up.
Cool, man. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate it. If you want to stay in the studio a little bit, a couple questions about real estate, but I appreciate you making a couple minutes of the time today. And I think everybody that was watching and will watch got a lot of value, man.
Thanks, Lenny.
All right. You're the man. Thank you.